The Galactic Empire had ruled the galaxy for millennia, a massive conglomerate of alien species, each with their own conquests, agendas, and hierarchies. The vast network of planets stretched across the stars, each system under the crushing control of powerful, often brutal rulers. Within this system, the human race had always been considered an afterthought. Their homeworld, Earth, had been a forgotten, almost irrelevant speck on the edge of galactic maps. For centuries, humanity had been a subjugated race, stripped of their power, their dignity, and their voice. The aliens, with their towering physiques and advanced technologies, looked down on humans as mere pests. But there was something about the human spirit that could not be so easily crushed. It began with whispers. First, in the back corners of bars and hidden alleys, among the few remaining human survivors scattered across the galaxy. Humanity had never been a race of submission. They were adaptable, resourceful, and far more dangerous than their outward fragility suggested. The Empire thought them weak, but it had severely underestimated the ingenuity and resilience of humankind. The humans had once been warlords on their home planet, conquering each other in the name of power and dominance. But after the arrival of the alien forces centuries ago, their once proud civilization was dismantled and reduced to the role of servitude. They were assigned menial labor, sent to distant mines, and used as cannon fodder in the Empire's endless wars. But as the years passed, something extraordinary began to unfold. The human race, which had once seemed destined for extinction under the Empire's iron grip, was slowly finding its unity again. It all started with the rise of the human rebel group known as the Aegis. A small band of insurgents, operating from the fringes of Empire-controlled space, began organizing revolts. They hit the Empire where it hurt, its supply lines, its communication networks, its labor camps. The Aegis grew bolder with every strike, gaining support from human slaves across the galaxy. Soon, they began reaching out to other oppressed species, those who had also been crushed by the Empire's iron fist. Captain Sarah Holt, the leader of Aegis, was a woman of few words but of great resolve. A former military strategist for the Empire, she had seen the brutality firsthand. Her loyalty to the Empire had shattered when her family was killed in one of their purification campaigns, an event that spurred her into rebellion. She knew how to outthink her enemies, to strike in ways they didn't expect. And soon, she would prove that humans, no matter how small, could bring down giants. The Aegis had a singular focus: destroy the Empire's power, one system at a time. But it wasn't enough to simply fight back. They needed allies, other species oppressed by the Empire, many of whom had been ground into submission for centuries. The humans had a plan. They would ignite a galactic uprising, using their reputation for resilience and their resourcefulness to rally the oppressed to their side. They had already begun spreading hope, showing others that resistance was possible. And it was working. Meanwhile, the Empire's leadership remained blissfully unaware of the growing insurgency. The higher-ups in the Empire, long accustomed to ruling with fear and overwhelming force, dismissed the humans as inconsequential. They had bigger problems to deal with: squabbles between species, resource shortages, and maintaining control over the vast swath of territory they had claimed over the millennia. The human resistance was a footnote, a nuisance to be handled later. But that was where they were wrong. The human rebellion, led by Holt and the Aegis, had one major advantage the Empire couldn't comprehend: humanity's spirit could never be enslaved. They were not like the other species the Empire had crushed. They would adapt, they would evolve, and when the time came, they would rise up and show the galaxy just what the underdogs were capable of. The first victory came unexpectedly. A joint strike by the Aegis and a coalition of rebel species led to the destruction of a key Imperial outpost. It was a swift, calculated attack that crippled the Empire's control over a vital system, sending shockwaves through the ranks of their forces. For the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer cowering in the shadows. They had struck, and they had struck hard. But that was just the beginning. The fire that had been kindled would soon blaze across the galaxy, as more and more planets and species began to rally to the cause of the human-led rebellion. They had shattered their chains, and now they were determined to show the Empire that humanity would no longer be a forgotten footnote in the history of the stars. And soon, the Empire would learn a harsh truth: the Underdogs were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. The galaxy was no longer the quiet, controlled expanse it had been under the Empire's reign. News of the Aegis victory spread quickly, igniting hope like wildfire across the oppressed systems. The Empire, slow to recognize the gravity of what had occurred, dismissed the defeat as an isolated incident, a fluke. But the spark had been lit, and what followed would be anything but a fleeting moment. Captain Sarah Holt, now a symbol of resistance, understood the gravity of their position. Their victory had struck a nerve, but the war was just beginning. The Aegis was still a small, scattered group, its resources limited. They could not stand alone against the vast might of the Galactic Empire. The next phase of their plan would be more daring, more dangerous. Holt gathered her inner circle, a team of rebels who had been with her from the start. Each had their own story of loss, of suffering, but together they had formed a bond stronger than anything the Empire could break. There was Jalen, the sharp-tongued alien engineer who could turn any scrap into a weapon, and Rook, a former Imperial soldier turned defector who had seen the Empire's cruelty firsthand. Then there was Mara, the brilliant tactician who had devised the strike on the Imperial outpost. "Now we expand," Holt said, standing before a holographic map of the galaxy. "We take the fight to their heart." Her voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. The Empire might have dismissed their first victory, but Holt knew that the next would be impossible to ignore. If they were going to win this war, they needed to hit harder, faster, and in ways that would force the Empire to react. Rook, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "We need to hit their supply chains. We strike where it hurts most, their fleets, their transport hubs. If we can cripple their logistics, we can slow them down enough to give us time to rally the rest of the galaxy." Holt nodded, a glimmer of approval in her eyes. Rook had been invaluable since joining the rebellion. His knowledge of Imperial tactics and infrastructure made him an asset, one the Aegis could not afford to lose. "We'll need allies," Mara added, her voice cool and analytical. "We can't do this alone. The Empire controls too much space." "I know," Holt replied. "Which is why we need to reach out. We've been working with smaller resistance groups, but it's time to bring in the big players, the alien species who have suffered under Imperial rule for centuries." The next several weeks were a whirlwind of diplomacy, subterfuge, and military planning. The Aegis sent envoys to the farthest corners of the galaxy, offering aid and alliances to anyone who was willing to fight the Empire. In return, they promised not just freedom, but a place in the new order that was beginning to take shape. They forged uneasy pacts with species long oppressed by the Empire, creatures with abilities far beyond humanity's, yet who had been beaten into submission by the Imperial war machine. The most reluctant ally they gained was the Corrin, a race of giant, hulking beings known for their immense strength and endurance. For centuries, they had been forced into the Empire's service as enforcers, their warrior culture turned into a tool of oppression. The Corrin had long been on the verge of rebellion, but fear of Imperial retaliation had kept them in line. However, with the Aegis victory, hope began to stir in their hearts. The Corrin had no love for the Empire, and their desire for vengeance was now bound to humanity's cause. But the rebellion needed more than just allies, they needed something to tip the scales. And that something was a weapon. A weapon that could level the playing field and give the Aegis a fighting chance against the Empire's superior firepower. The answer came in the form of an ancient, forgotten technology, buried deep within an abandoned Imperial research station on a distant planet. The station, long since ignored by the Empire, held secrets that could change the course of the war. The weapon in question was a piece of biotechnology, a living, sentient starship capable of destroying entire fleets in a single strike. It was dangerous. It was unpredictable. And it was humanity's only hope. Holt made the decision to go after it. The mission was perilous, the odds of success slim. They would need to infiltrate the station, recover the weapon, and bring it back to their fleet before the Empire could respond. It was a high-risk move, one that could either propel the rebellion into a new phase of the war or end it entirely. With her most trusted allies by her side, Holt prepared for the assault. As the Aegis fleet gathered and the final preparations were made, a palpable sense of determination settled over the crew. This was their moment. The galaxy was watching. If they succeeded, the Empire would be forced to take notice. As the rebellion's forces surged forward, the Empire began to stir, slowly realizing that these underdogs were no longer a threat to be ignored. The first shots had been fired, and there was no turning back now. The Aegis fleet set a course for the abandoned Imperial Research Station, a derelict facility located on the fringe of known space. The station, once a hub of experimentation and advanced military research, had been deemed unnecessary by the Empire's higher-ups and left to rot. It was a place shrouded in mystery, its location known only to a few high-ranking officers, most of whom were now long dead or too entrenched in their own power to care. But Captain Holt knew the value of what lay inside. The mission to recover the ancient biotechnology, the sentient starship, was fraught with danger. The station was not as abandoned as it seemed. Despite its outward decay, it still held value to the Empire's secretive faction of scientists, engineers, and military commanders, all of whom would stop at nothing to protect their classified research. As the fleet approached the station, the crew's tension was palpable. Everyone knew the stakes. If they failed, the rebellion would lose its most crucial advantage, and the Aegis would be doomed to face the Empire's wrath without hope of winning. Yet, if they succeeded, they would have a weapon capable of shifting the balance of power in their favor. Holt's fleet of ships, small, nimble, and outmatched by the Empire's firepower, dropped out of hyperspace into the cold, dark expanse of the abandoned system. The station loomed ahead, a hulking mass of twisted metal and forgotten technology. Its once proud structure was now a decaying monument to imperial hubris, floating lifelessly in space. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the Aegis engines and the occasional crackle of static over comms. "We're in position," Mara said, her voice steady, betraying none of the anxiety that gripped her heart. "We'll have to approach on foot from here. Scanning the station indicates multiple breaches in the hull. It's not just abandoned, it's been scavenged." "Understood," Holt replied. "Everyone, stay sharp. We don't know who or what is still inside." The Aegis command crew readied themselves for the next phase, an infiltration mission into the heart of the station. Holt, Rook, Mara, and Jalen led a small team aboard a stealth shuttle, making their way toward one of the station's few functional docking bays. The rest of the fleet remained in position, ready to provide backup or evacuate the team if things went south. As they docked, the eerie silence of the station washed over them. The air was thick with the smell of rust and stale atmosphere, and the flickering lights barely illuminated the corridors ahead. The team moved quickly, using the shadows to cover their approach. They had to find the weapon, but they also had to stay hidden from whatever Imperial forces remained. This station was a dark relic of the Empire's secrets, secrets that some might kill to protect. Their first encounter with the station's occupants came much sooner than expected. As they turned a corner, they found themselves face to face with a small group of Imperial soldiers, their eyes wide with surprise. They had been scavenging the station's remains, unaware of the rebels' approach. Without hesitation, Rook fired first, his rifle cutting through the air with deadly precision. The soldiers crumpled to the ground in an instant. They had been outnumbered, but in close combat, the humans were ruthless, efficient, quick, and ready to adapt to whatever threat faced them. There was no time for hesitation, no room for mercy. "Let's move," Holt commanded, her voice calm but firm. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. They continued deeper into the station, the eerie hum of the station's failing systems echoing in the halls. The deeper they went, the more they encountered signs of previous research, experiment logs, half-finished projects, and forgotten technologies scattered across decaying workbenches. The Aegis team pushed forward, their objective clear. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of navigating the labyrinthine corridors, they reached the central chamber of the station. The large, circular room was filled with ancient machinery, some of it dormant, some still crackling with strange energy. In the center of the room was a containment field, a swirling mass of energy holding something enormous. It was a starship, but not just any starship. This ship was alive. Its surface rippled with energy, its form shifting and contorting as if it were part organic and part mechanical. The ship pulsed with an almost sentient awareness, its vast, alien intelligence probing the minds of the humans who had entered its domain. "It's real," Jalen whispered, his voice filled with awe. Holt stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We found it." But just as they approached the containment field, a sound like thunder erupted from behind them. The door to the chamber slammed shut with an ominous hiss, and a dozen Imperial soldiers poured into the room, their weapons drawn and aimed. "Not so fast," a voice called out from the shadows. Holt's heart sank. The Empire had anticipated their move. They had been waiting. A figure stepped into view, an officer of the Empire, tall, imposing, with a cruel smile curling beneath his helmet. "You thought you could steal this from us? You're mistaken." The officer's hand raised, and the Imperial soldiers flanked him, their guns trained on the rebel group. "We'll see just how far you'll go for your precious weapon." The atmosphere in the chamber was tense, the flickering lights casting long shadows across the walls as the standoff unfolded. Holt and her team were pinned, the massive, sentient starship now within arm's reach but just out of their grasp. The Imperial officer, tall and imposing, smiled coldly, as if the Aegis' efforts were a joke. His helmeted face betrayed no emotion, but his voice was a chilling mixture of arrogance and contempt. "You really thought you could waltz in here, steal our greatest creation, and leave without consequences?" the officer sneered. "I've been waiting for this moment. Your rebellion ends here." Holt didn't flinch. The weight of her team's failure hung heavy, but the fire within her refused to be extinguished. "We're not leaving without it. You know we can't be stopped. It's not just about a ship, it's about ending your empire's reign." The officer's cold laugh reverberated through the chamber. "End it? You're an insignificant speck in the galaxy. The empire is eternal." He gave a slight nod, and the soldiers surrounding them raised their blasters. But before they could fire, something strange happened. The starship, still suspended within its energy field, pulsed, its surface rippling like liquid as though it sensed the growing tension. The chamber seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, and Holt could feel the hair on her neck stand up as the starship's presence seemed to grow more intense. "What in the stars?" Mara whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. The officer looked over his shoulder, surprised by the shift in energy. The starship was alive, and it wasn't going to let them take it without a fight. It had been dormant for so long, but now, it seemed to be waking up. Holt quickly turned to Rook. "Get to the console. We need to release the containment field. Now." Without waiting for confirmation, Rook darted toward a nearby control panel, his movements quick and precise. The Imperial soldiers, still unaware of the true threat, focused on the rebel group. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt in the most dire of circumstances. "Ready," Rook called. He pushed the final button, and the containment field shattered, the energy dissipating in a crackling flash. The starship's form flickered, then solidified fully as it floated free of its restraints, a massive, living vessel now under the rebels' control. Before anyone could react, the starship emitted a resonating, almost deafening sound, a pulse that reverberated throughout the station, shaking the very walls. The Imperial soldiers froze, their blasters faltering in their hands as the ship's immense consciousness reached out to them, an overwhelming presence. "Run!" Holt shouted. "Get to the shuttle, now!" The Imperial officer's eyes widened as the ship responded to Holt's command, its shape shifting like liquid metal, its tendrils reaching toward the soldiers. In a single, sweeping motion, it released a shockwave of energy, sending the soldiers flying back, their armor shattered and weapons scattered. The officer's voice came out in a strangled gasp. "No! This is impossible!" He raised his weapon, but it was useless. The ship had already begun to rewrite the rules of combat, the unimaginable force of its existence bending reality itself. As the Aegis team made their way back to the shuttle, they could feel the starship's power coursing through the station. The ship wasn't simply a weapon, it was a force of nature. It had been created as a living weapon for the Empire, and now it was free, responding to the humanity that had come to claim it. The shuttle door closed behind them, and Holt's heart raced. She wasn't sure if they would make it out alive, but one thing was certain, the starship's destruction of the Imperial forces had bought them the time they needed to escape. "Hold on," Holt barked, taking the pilot's seat. "We're not out of the woods yet." Jalen manned the weapons, scanning for any remaining Imperial ships in the vicinity. "We've got company," he reported. "Imperial reinforcements are on the way, at least 3 cruisers." Rook turned to Holt, determination in his eyes. "Do we engage?" For a moment, Holt hesitated. Engaging the Empire directly in this moment could be a death sentence. But then she glanced back at the massive, living starship, which seemed to pulse with energy, its form already orbiting the shuttle. "We don't engage. We get out. The starship's going to do the work for us." Without further instruction, the ship responded, its form shifting to encompass the shuttle as though it were its own extension. The very air crackled with its presence, and as the Imperial cruisers came into range, the starship released another pulse, a shockwave of raw, unfiltered energy. The nearest cruiser was instantly crippled, its systems fried and its engines sputtering out. The other ships hesitated, unwilling to risk engaging a force they could neither understand nor control. In moments, the Aegis S shuttle was in hyperspace, escaping the Imperial threat, just barely. Holt leaned back in her seat, eyes closing for a moment, her breath coming in short bursts. They had succeeded. They had the weapon. And they had survived. But Holt knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not forgive this. They had just ignited a firestorm across the galaxy, and there was no turning back now. As they shot through hyperspace, Holt looked around at her team, all of them bruised, battered, but alive. They had a weapon that could change the course of history. But the war was far from over. "We've taken the first step," Holt said quietly, her gaze hardening. "Now we make sure the Empire understands that we're not just fighting for freedom. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy itself." The Aegis fleet emerged from hyperspace, the stars stretching into endless streaks of light before them. They had succeeded in stealing the living starship, a weapon of unimaginable power capable of reshaping the battlefield. It was a gamble, a high-stakes, last-ditch effort, but it had paid off. The starship was now under their control, and with it, they had the means to strike directly at the heart of the Empire. But as Holt stood at the helm, staring out at the vastness of the galaxy, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was just a fleeting victory. The Empire's fury would be swift, and the galaxy was still a long way from being liberated. "We've got a lot of ground to cover," Mara said, standing beside her. "But the starship could give us an edge. It's unlike anything the Empire's ever faced." Holt nodded. "It's a game changer, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. We still need to rally the galaxy. We need to make the rest of the oppressed systems believe that the Empire can be defeated." Jalen, who had been scanning the latest intelligence, spoke up. "The Empire's not taking this lightly. They're already mustering their fleet, and the High Command is calling for reinforcements from every corner of their domain. It won't be long before they come for us, and with everything they've got." Rook, who had been silent for much of the conversation, turned to Holt. "We need to act fast. We've got the momentum now. If we wait too long, the Empire will consolidate their power and crush us before we can get enough systems to revolt." The decision was clear. The Aegis needed to act decisively. They would use the starship as a spearhead, a weapon to weaken the Empire's forces and sow chaos among their ranks. But Holt also knew that the rebellion couldn't just rely on brute force. They needed to outsmart the Empire, to strike at its most vulnerable points. Over the next few days, the fleet's strategy took shape. They would attack multiple Imperial strongholds simultaneously, forcing the Empire to spread its forces thin. The goal wasn't just to cause damage, it was to send a message. The Aegis wasn't a band of rebels hiding in the shadows anymore. They were a rising power, a force to be reckoned with. "We'll hit their supply lines," Mara suggested. "Their ships, their communications. We cripple their ability to respond." Holt agreed. "And we'll make sure the rest of the galaxy sees it. We broadcast every victory, every battle, across every system we can reach. If the Empire thinks they're fighting isolated rebels, they're wrong. We're everywhere now." The first strike came at a mining colony on the edge of Empire space, an unassuming target that the Empire had never deemed worth defending. Holt's plan was simple: destroy the mining operation and disrupt the Empire's ability to fuel their war machine. The Aegis fleet would hit fast and hard, leaving no room for retaliation. The starship, its power now fully understood by the crew, would be their trump card. It could wipe out entire fleets with a single pulse of energy, but it was more than just a weapon, it was an ally, an extension of the Aegis itself. The ship's intelligence, still adapting to its new role, had formed a connection with Holt. It was more than a machine, it had become a partner in the rebellion's war against the Empire. The battle for the mining colony was swift and devastating. The Aegis fleet, led by the starship, tore through the Imperial defenses with ease. The Empire's soldiers fought valiantly, but they were no match for the relentless assault. The starship's energy pulses decimated the Imperial ships, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. The message was clear: the Empire was no longer invincible. As the fleet made its escape, Holt felt a surge of exhilaration. This wasn't just a victory for the rebellion, it was a victory for every oppressed species in the galaxy. The Empire's grip was weakening. But the Empire was not blind. It would retaliate, and they would not go down without a fight. A few days later, the retaliation came. Imperial fleets, vast and well-coordinated, moved to recapture the lost systems and strike back at the heart of the rebellion. Holt knew that the next battle would be different. The Empire would not make the same mistake twice. As the enemy fleet closed in on the Aegis fleet's position, Holt stood on the bridge, her eyes cold and calculating. "They're coming for us. We need to be ready." Rook stepped forward, a grim look on his face. "We've made them angry. But now they'll know what it means to fight humanity." The rebel fleet jumped to a remote sector of the galaxy, where they would engage in their most dangerous battle yet. Holt had no illusions about what was to come. The Aegis would fight with everything they had, but even with the starship at their side, this battle could decide the fate of the rebellion. The massive Imperial fleet loomed on the horizon, its warships taking up every inch of space in the distant system. It was an overwhelming display of power, a reminder that the Empire had vast resources at its disposal. The Aegis fleet, by comparison, was small, outgunned, and outmanned. But they had one thing the Empire could never replicate: unity. Humanity's determination to fight for freedom was their greatest weapon, and the starship, now fully integrated into the fleet, was their harbinger of doom. Holt stood at the command center of the Aegis, her mind sharp and focused. She had always believed that humanity was capable of more than the galaxy gave them credit for, but seeing their fleet now, with the starship at their helm, she knew they had become something unstoppable. "This is it," she said, her voice resolute. "We can't back down now. We've made it this far. We fight for every world under Imperial rule, for every system that has suffered." Rook nodded, his eyes steely. "We've taken the fight to them. Now we end it." Mara, who had been at the scanners, spoke up. "The Imperial fleet is about to enter attack range. They're expecting a quick fight, this won't be like the last battle." "We're not giving them that," Holt replied. "We'll show them that we've outgrown their tactics. The Empire fights in patterns, they think they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." The plan was set, a two-pronged assault. The Aegis fleet would feint retreat, pulling the Empire's ships into a position that would force them to chase the rebels across a dangerous asteroid field. There, the rebels could use the environment to their advantage, launching hit-and-run strikes that would damage the Empire's supply ships, crippling their ability to sustain the fight. At the same time, the starship would act as the tip of the spear. With its living, adaptable design, it could strike anywhere, at any moment. Its energy pulses a weapon of terrifying efficiency. The Empire would be caught between the unpredictable guerrilla tactics of the fleet and the devastating power of the starship, making them question everything they thought they knew about warfare. As the battle began, Holt's heart raced. The Aegis fleet powered up their engines and began a calculated retreat, drawing the Empire's forces deeper into the asteroid field. The Imperial commanders, believing they had cornered the rebels, pressed forward, eager to crush them once and for all. However, they had miscalculated. The asteroid field was a death trap. The Empire's ships, larger and less maneuverable, found themselves dodging massive chunks of rock that the Aegis fleet used as cover. The Imperial ships were forced to slow down, unable to match the nimbleness of the smaller rebel vessels. The first wave of attacks came from the starship. It shifted its shape, extending tendrils of energy that crackled with raw power. The massive ship launched a devastating pulse, hitting the lead Imperial cruiser square in the hull. The ship buckled and exploded in a shower of metal and flame, its crew vaporized instantly. The Empire's retaliation was swift. Their ship scattered, launching a barrage of firepower that could have obliterated a smaller fleet, but the Aegis dodged and weaved, using the asteroid field as cover. The starship continued its unpredictable assaults, moving with unnatural speed, striking at Imperial vessels before they could even respond. In the chaos, Holt's voice rang out across the fleet's comms, "Focus on their supply lines. We hit them where it hurts." The Aegis fleet, emboldened by the success of the starship, charged forward, picking off Imperial supply ships that were too slow to escape. One by one, the Empire's reinforcements were cut off from the main battle, unable to sustain the attack. The rebels were in complete control of the battlefield, their strikes efficient and deadly. But the Empire, relentless as ever, was not without its trump cards. From the depths of their fleet, a new type of warship emerged, a colossal dreadnought, armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single strike. It was the Empire's last-ditch effort to reclaim dominance, and it was heading straight for the heart of the Aegis fleet. "Captain, that dreadnought is on an intercept course," Jalen warned, his voice tense. "It's going to reach us in less than 5 minutes." Holt took a deep breath. This was the moment. She had led her fleet through countless battles, but this would be the one that decided their fate. If they could take down the dreadnought, the Empire would recover, and the rebellion would be crushed in a matter of days. She turned to Mara and Rook. "We've faced worse odds. We take it down together. Everyone, focus on that dreadnought. We can't let it get within range." As the dreadnought closed in, the Aegis fleet gathered their remaining forces and prepared for a final, all-out assault. The starship, its energy pulses charged to the limit, moved in front of the fleet like a living shield. The dreadnought's enormous cannons fired, unleashing volleys of energy blasts that shook the very fabric of space. But the starship absorbed the shots, its form shifting and contorting, its power systems compensating for the hits. Holt's voice rang out over the comms, urgent and commanding, "All ships, concentrate fire on the dreadnought's engines. Take out their power source." The fleet complied, their weapons unleashing a barrage of precision strikes. The dreadnought retaliated with fury, its massive guns firing relentlessly. But as the Aegis fleet closed in, they saw the first signs of weakness, its energy shields flickering, its engines struggling to maintain power. "Now!" Holt shouted. With a final, devastating pulse, the starship unleashed all its stored energy at the dreadnought's heart, its core, the very lifeblood of the Imperial war machine. The explosion was magnificent, a blinding flash that engulfed the dreadnought in an instant. When the light cleared, nothing remained but debris. The Imperial fleet, seeing their prized dreadnought destroyed, faltered. The remaining ships attempted to retreat, but the Aegis fleet was relentless. The battle was over. The Empire had been dealt a blow that would take years to recover from. Holt stood at the command center, watching as the last of the Imperial ships fled into hyperspace. Her heart raced with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. They had won. The galaxy had just witnessed the power of humanity, and it was a force that could not be ignored. But Holt knew this victory was only the beginning. The Empire would regroup, but now, they knew the cost of underestimating the Aegis fleet. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had shattered the chains of galactic oppression, and now, they would lead the charge to reclaim the galaxy for all who had suffered under the Empire's rule. The aftermath of the battle was still fresh in the air as the Aegis fleet limped into a secure, undisclosed system on the outer rim. The fleet had taken heavy losses, but their victory was undeniable. The destruction of the Imperial dreadnought had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, shaking the foundations of the Empire's iron grip on the universe. For the first time, the rebellion had a fighting chance. Holt stood on the bridge of the Aegis, her mind racing with the implications of their success. The galaxy was in turmoil, and the war was far from over, but humanity had taken its place as a force to be reckoned with. The starship, still a living, breathing entity, hovered just outside the fleet's perimeter, its presence now a symbol of their triumph. Mara, Jalen, Rook, Holt said, turning to face her trusted team. We've done it. We've shattered the myth of Imperial invincibility. We've won a battle, Mara replied, her voice filled with resolve. But there's more to be done. The galaxy is watching, and the Empire won't let this go. Jalen leaned over a nearby console, tapping through the most recent intelligence reports. We've done serious damage, but the Empire is rebuilding fast. Reinforcements are already being deployed across the core systems. The war's far from over. But it's a war they can't win, Rook said quietly. Not when the rest of the galaxy knows we can fight back. The Empire has never faced a united front like this before. Holt nodded. Humanity is the spark. We've lit the fuse. But now we need to bring the rest of the galaxy into the fold. The Empire's defeat is inevitable, but we can't win by force alone. We need to build alliances, form coalitions. A new voice cut through the conversation, an unexpected but welcome presence. It was the voice of the starship, its consciousness, now fully integrated with the Aegis fleet. It was not simply a weapon anymore, it had become a partner, a guiding force. Humanity's fight has just begun, the starship's voice echoed within the command center. But you are not alone. The galaxy's forgotten worlds are waiting for your call. Holt's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of awe and understanding in her expression. The starship had evolved, its understanding of the galaxy's complex political and social landscape deepening. It wasn't just a weapon, it was now a beacon of hope for those living under Imperial oppression. We'll rally the oppressed systems, start forging new alliances, Holt said, her voice firm. Humanity will lead the charge, but this is a fight for everyone. We can't do it alone. The communications officer, a young recruit who had joined the rebellion only months ago, stepped forward with urgency. Commander Holt, we've received a transmission. It's from the Hallian Federation, they want to meet. The Hallian Federation, once a loyal vassal of the Empire, had now expressed interest in an alliance with the rebels. The transmission was unexpected, but it was proof that the ripples of the Aegis' victory were being felt across the galaxy. Holt didn't hesitate. Send a response. We'll meet them. As the crew scrambled to prepare for the meeting, Holt couldn't shake the weight of responsibility that pressed down on her. She had always believed in humanity's potential, but now, she was leading them into uncharted territory. Their victory against the Empire was monumental, but it was just one step in a much larger journey. The galaxy was vast, and its struggles were many. There were countless systems still shackled by Imperial rule, and the rebellion's victory would only matter if they could unite those systems under one banner. It wasn't just about military conquest, it was about creating a new order, one where the people, not the Empire, held the power. The Aegis fleet set course for the Hallian Federation, knowing that this could be the first of many such alliances. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but Holt felt a sense of hope that had been absent for too long. Humanity had risen against the odds and shattered the chains that had bound them. Now, they would show the galaxy what true freedom looked like. As they approached the meeting site, Holt stood before the crew, her heart swelling with pride. "We've proven something," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "The galaxy knows that we won't stop until the Empire is nothing but a memory. But we also know this: we are stronger together. The people are what will rebuild this galaxy, and humanity will lead them." Rook stepped forward, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "It's not just about fighting anymore. It's about building a new future. One that we can shape with our own hands." Mara smiled, her usual steely demeanor softening for just a moment. "A future where humanity doesn't have to hide in the shadows." Holt looked out at the vastness of space, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Yet in that moment, with the fleet united and the starship at their side, Holt felt an unshakable certainty. The galaxy was on the brink of change, and humanity was the force that would bring it. They were no longer the underdogs. They were the masters of their destiny. And the Empire? They were finished.